Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 25th of October and this is Scotland at 7. I'm Andrew Wilson and this evening I'm hosting the programme from Edinburgh. First we will have today's coronavirus update and then we will look at today's news and headlines from Scotland and around the world. As of 2 p.m. today, since the start of the pandemic, a total of 3,376,085 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres. Of these, 2,748,488 have been confirmed negative and 627,597 have tested positive. There are 2,240 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will have a test. Of the people who have tested positive, 902 were in hospital last night, 57 of whom were in intensive care. There are no new reported deaths of people who have tested positive, and that means that the number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 9,052. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. The latest UK daily figures show that 139,571 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, and that is an increase of 38 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just in hospitals. And as of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,308,371 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination in Scotland, and 3,895,239 had received their second dose. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, delivered a keynote speech at Strathclyde University today, setting out how COP26 in Glasgow can lead the world into the green revolution, as she called on international leaders to take credible action to limit global temperature increases and to deliver a fair financial package for the global south. In the week that delegates begin to arrive in Scotland's largest city, the First Minister addressed an audience of young people and students to argue that the country is uniquely placed to build a bridge between the voices of civil society and world leaders. The First Minister said in her speech that the Scottish Government will no longer support unlimited recovery of hydrocarbons, including oil and gas. The Scottish Government and the Scottish Green Party agreement set out the position that countries around the world, including the UK, cannot continue with unlimited recovery of hydrocarbons if the aims of the Paris Agreement are to be met. The focus will now be on achieving the fastest possible just transition for the oil and gas sector, one that delivers jobs and economic benefit, ensures our energy security, and meets our climate obligations. The First Minister was insistent that keeping the prospect of limiting global warming to less than 1.5 degrees alive must be more than a slogan, and that delivering on the long-promised £100 billion of climate finance is an essential part of ensuring good faith between developed and developing countries. Setting out further action by the Scottish Government, she said that Scotland will do what it can to contribute to a successful outcome at the Glasgow Summit by bringing together member states in the negotiating room and with the world's regions, cities and developed governments representing almost 2 billion people. After the speech, the First Minister answered questions for the Scottish Climate Assembly and to members of the Scottish Youth Parliament. Meanwhile, a major fuel poverty charity has called on Rishi Sunak to help poorer households balance their own negative budgets this winter, or face driving millions of households into more debt. Ahead of Wednesday's autumn budget, National Energy Action has urged the Chancellor to use new revenues from VAT on soaring energy bills and carbon taxes to help heat and power the homes of 2 million households across the UK. The SNP has also voiced concerns about the cost of living crisis, demanding that the UK Government introduce an emergency package to boost household incomes and reverse rising levels of poverty in the UK, as well as a multi-billion-pound Brexit recovery fund to mitigate against the growing cost of Brexit. Commenting, the SNP's Deputy Westminster leader Kirsten Oswald MP said, "Under Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak's leadership, the UK is now tackling a cost of living crisis. As a result of the negligence of this Tory government, we are witnessing rising levels of poverty and inequality across the UK. It is therefore incumbent on Rishi Sunak to make tackling the cost of living crisis the number one priority of his budget. Millions of families are currently worse off as a result of damaging Tory policies, such as imposing a hard Brexit, slashing universal credit, hiking national insurance, freezing public sector pay, and scrapping the triple lock on pensions, all whilst tackling a global pandemic." She continued, "The Chancellor must use this budget to boost incomes, improve sick pay, reverse the universal credit cut, and introduce an energy payment for low-income families who have been directly hit by callous Tory cuts." The Chancellor, meanwhile, has announced that he intends to increase the national living wage from £8.91 to £9.50 an hour at Wednesday's Budget and Spending Review. The national living wage was introduced in 2016 and sets the minimum hourly pay a person over the age of 23 can earn when working. Rishi Sunak will also announce a wage rise for young people under the age of 23. For those aged 21 to 22, the national minimum wage rate increases to £9.18 an hour. The rate for 18 to 20-year-olds increases to £6.83, and for 16 to 17-year-olds and apprentices will now receive the same rate of £4.81 an hour. The UK's lowest paid workers will also receive a pay rise next year as the national living wage increases from £8.91 to £9.50 an hour. From the 1st of April, young people and apprentices will also see their wages boosted as the national minimum wage for people aged 21 to 22 goes up to £9.18 an hour and the apprentice rate increases to £4.81 an hour. The Low Pay Commission estimated that 1.5 million to 2.5 million people were impacted by the national living wage increases last year. There have also been calls for Chancellor Rishi Sunak to make tackling the poverty and cost of living crisis the number one priority at the budget, as a new poll reveals the issue as a top concern for Scots. The Understanding Scotland survey of 2,000 people, published today by Diffley Partnership and Charlotte Street Partners, reveals that more than a third of Scots say that dealing with poverty and inequality is their top issue of concern, compared to 26% who cited the economy. It follows separate polling by YouGov, published earlier in October, which showed 3/4 of Scots think that Rishi Sunak is doing a bad job at managing the economy, and 8 in 10 think that Boris Johnson is doing a bad job. Commenting, the SNP Shadow Chancellor Alison Thewliss MP said, "The Tory government is directly responsible for rising levels of poverty and inequality across the UK. Rishi Sunak must make tackling the growing Tory poverty and cost of living crisis the number one priority for the UK budget. Millions of families are worse off as a direct result of damaging Tory choices to impose a hard Brexit, slash universal credit, hike national insurance, freeze public sector pay, and scrap the triple lock on pensions, pushing families into poverty." Strike action during COP26 will go ahead as the Rail, Maritime and Transport Workers AGM rejects the latest pay offer from ScotRail. Delegates at a meeting at the union's AGM in Leeds have voted to reject a revised pay offer from ScotRail and to go ahead with strike action alongside Caledonian sleeper workers throughout the COP26 meeting in Glasgow next week. Representatives had already voted overwhelmingly for strike action to secure a fair pay deal, they say, from the 1st to the 12th of November, almost the entire duration of the summit. The union described the offer of a 2.5% increase this year, 2.2% in 2022, and a one-off £300 bonus for staff working during the summit as pitiful. Two other rail unions, ASLEF and the TSSA, have already accepted the offer, while Unite has recommended its members vote to accept it. The UN's World Meteorological Organization has announced levels of climate heating gases in the atmosphere hit record levels in 2020, despite the coronavirus-related lockdowns. The concentration of carbon dioxide, the most important greenhouse gas, is now 50% higher than before the Industrial Revolution sparked the mass burning of fossil fuels. Methane levels have more than doubled since 1750, and all key greenhouse gases rose faster in 2020 than the average for the previous decade, and this trend has continued in 2021, the WMO report found. The data shows that the climate crisis continues to worsen and sends a stark message to the nations meeting at the COP26 climate summit in Glasgow in a week's time, according to the WMO chief, Professor Petteri Talas. We are way off track. The negotiators at the summit must deliver action to keep alive the goal of ending greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 and avoiding the worst climate impacts. Only stopping emissions will stabilise the level of the gases and halt the temperature rises that drive the increasing damage from heat waves, floods and droughts. The burning of coal, oil and gas is the biggest source of CO2, which is the cause of 66% of global heating. CO2 emissions fell by about 5% in 2020 due to COVID restrictions compared to 2019. But many billions of tons of CO2 were still pumped into the atmosphere, meaning the COVID economic slowdown did not have any discernible impact on the atmospheric levels of greenhouse gases and their growth rates, the WMO said. About half of the CO2 from human activities remains in the atmosphere, with the other half soaked up by the oceans and trees and plants on land. But the WMO warned that global heating is damaging the ability of the natural world to take up emissions with, for example, the Amazon now having flipped from absorbing CO2 to emitting it as wildfires, droughts and logging destroy trees. Methane accounts for 16% of global heating, and the majority of its emissions are caused by human activity, such as cattle farming and fossil fuel production. Methane is a potent and relatively short-lived greenhouse gas, so cutting emissions has a rapid impact. Ahead of COP26, the US and EU pledged to cut methane emissions by 30% by 2030. The other major greenhouse gas is nitrous oxide, responsible for 7% of global heating. These emissions mostly come from the overuse of chemical fertilizers in farming and cattle manure. The greenhouse gas data is collected by the WMO's Global Atmosphere Watch program. Levels of atmospheric greenhouse gases are higher than ever experienced by the human race and the highest for 3 to 5 million years. At that time, global temperature was 2 to 3 degrees centigrade hotter and sea levels were 10 to 20 meters higher than today, said Professor Talas. But there weren't 7.8 billion people then. Facebook will fuel more violent unrest around the world because of the way its algorithms are designed to promote divisive content, the whistleblower Frances Haugen told the UK Parliament today. Ms Haugen, a former product manager on Facebook's civic misinformation team who has turned whistleblower, appeared before a parliamentary select committee in Westminster that is examining plans to regulate social media companies. She said the social network saw safety as a cost centre, lionised a startup culture where cutting corners was good, and said it was unquestionably making hate worse. The events we're seeing around the world, things like Myanmar and Ethiopia, those are the opening chapters because engagement-based ranking does two things. One, it prioritises and amplifies divisive and polarising extreme content, and two, it concentrates it, she said. Facebook declined to provide any immediate comment in response to Ms Haugen's appearance at the parliamentary committee. In October, Ms Haugen told a US Senate Commerce Subcommittee hearing that Facebook had devised ways to keep users scrolling, even if it was detrimental to their well-being, putting profit before people. She also said she provided the documents used in a Wall Street Journal investigation and a Senate hearing on Instagram's harm to teenage girls. She compared the platform to addictive substances such as tobacco and opioids. Earlier this month, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg hit back against Haugen's accusations, saying the argument that we deliberately push content that makes people angry for profit is deeply illogical. Before Monday's hearing, Ms Haugen met with the Home Secretary Priti Patel, who is in favour of legislation for tech platforms that fail to keep users safe. Facebook has been unwilling to accept even little slivers of profit being sacrificed for safety, and that's not acceptable, she said on Monday, singling out Instagram's impact on the mental health of some young users. The UK government is bringing forward laws that could fine social media companies up to 10% of their turnover if they fail to remove or limit the spread of illegal content, such as child sexual abuse. Scotland's flu and COVID-19 booster programmes are continuing with pace as people aged 60 to 69 and adults aged 16 and over with underlying health conditions will start to receive invitations for their flu and COVID-19 booster vaccinations through the post from today. Appointments for this group will take place at local community clinics and will run from late October and throughout November. Currently, as per the JCVI advice, we are vaccinating people in the highest risk groups for both flu and COVID-19, including those who are aged 70 years and over, people in older adult care homes, and those who are on the highest risk list, and frontline health and social care workers. In addition, we are delivering flu vaccinations to children under 2 years old who have underlying health conditions, preschool children aged 2 to 5, all school pupils, pregnant women, and all NHS healthcare workers. The winter flu and COVID-19 vaccination programme is working together to reduce the risks for both types of illness. Wherever possible, those eligible for the booster jab will receive both the flu vaccine and COVID-19 boosters on the same day, and this is safe and effective to do. More than 1.5 million COVID-19 and flu vaccinations have been administered since September the 6th. For those in the underlying health conditions group, the type of health condition will guide whether they will be given a flu jab, the COVID-19 booster, or both vaccines. Details on who is eligible for these vaccinations and when they can expect an invitation are available on the NHS Inform website. And driving up participation levels of women and girls will be an important part of a £100 million push which doubles Scotland's sport and active living budget by the end of the current Parliament. Preparations are also underway for a Scottish Sport Media Summit aimed at exploring, through a collaborative approach, ways to increase visibility and coverage of women's sport across all platforms. The 5th annual Scottish Women and Girls in Sport Week kicked off today with a series of events planned over the coming 7 days. The Sports Minister, Marie Todd, will visit Dingwall Academy today to see for herself some of the activities being delivered and meet girls getting active, while other Scottish Government ministers will also take part in events during the course of the week. Ms Todd said, "More participation and visibility of girls and women in sport is a priority for this government. By doubling investment to £100 million in sport and active living, we hope to address issues around equality of access. Our plans for a Scottish Sport Media Summit will also address important issues around improving and increasing the visibility of women's sports, athletes and participation." And that was our final news item this evening. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. If you would like to support us, and we would really like you to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland, and you will find the link to do so on the screen now. There are other ways in which our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, either behind the scenes or in front of the cameras, or in any other way that helps to promote the station, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, we will be here again at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening with Scotland at 7, so please join us then. Thanks to everyone for joining us and watching Broadcasting Scotland today. And that's the way it is in Scotland. I hope that you have a very peaceful evening.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes,
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.